Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. We're again, Jim, Dave and myself are going to look back over our emphatic victory over Wasps last weekend and look forward to our big game against Munster in the Pro 12 on Saturday. Well, boys, a very odd sort of game against Wasps. 5 tries to 4, but could have really gone anyway for the start anyway.
Yeah, it was a bit of crack. It was a bit of fun. It was noticeable how all the Challenge Cup games were laden with tries. I counted 28 tries between the 4 games, as opposed to 9 tries in the 4 Heineken Cup games, and 5 of them were by the one team, Claremont. So you could see the intensity level wasn't quite the same, you know what I mean? And it's not to say the lads aren't trying, but just they're not killing themselves either in terms of, if they lose this, it's not going to be the end of the world. There isn't the same intensity, But as a game, it was actually quite enjoyable. It was annoying at times. They made some mistakes. Defence was poor again, very poor at times. But overall, it was an enjoyable game. They come back, they got the win, got a few nice tries. Ian Madigan was excellent again. So, yeah, good stuff.
Nice win, nice tries, soft defensive line. We're still too slow. We're still far too passive in defence. And that was a direct... it's all very well to say that, Wade or Vandell were stepping guys out wide far too easily. But the reason they were able to do that is because they were being given the ball, without a whole lot of pressure on them or the guy passing to them, which meant that they were taking the ball in full flight and they were able to step guys at pace. I mean, both of them have 100-metre bests faster than the Irish record. So they're quick guys.
Yeah. Wade especially is lightning. I have to say, that's the first time I got a really good look at him, and took his first try very well. Again, very weak defending. Yeah. In fairness, it was Massey really made the break.
Massey was the guy who made the break. He spotted a real kind of a
dog leg because McFadden stepped in, wasn't it?
Well, McFadden stepped out and he found himself kind of just going outside a back row player and.
Yeah, and in fairness, he made it, but the second one was just pure pace. You know what I mean? Some of the tackling could have been better, but it's very hard. A bit of free space like that. You know what I mean? To be fair, though, I do think they improved a bit. Certainly, what really won the game was that the third quarter of the game, first 20 minutes, second half. They tightened things up. Got kind of took it a little bit narrower. Didn't Parent playing it as loose. Kicked a few penalties, got a couple of tries. That could have won the game. Still annoying, and from what I heard is, even though Joe was fairly placid afterwards, I did hear that he tore strips off them in the dressing room. That he locked the door and tore strips off because he's sick of watching. One thing about Joe is, Joe would have made his name in a lot of ways in defence. For all we talk about, I love the attack in rugby. Joe's big thing is defence.
He is the defence coach.
He is the defence coach.
He refused to buy a defence coach. He wanted Greg Feek in.
Just one thing, just to go back to what you were saying about, say, a couple of minutes, a 20-minute period sealed the game. That's something that Leinster do. We've mentioned it numerous times here, that Leinster sometimes, when they're not playing really well, when they're playing okay, Leinster can be a bit, sleepy for 50 to 60 minutes in a match and rely on a 20-minute burst, and that they're so much better than most of the opposition they come up against. Problem is, at the top end of tournaments, that's not going to work. You have to be playing for 80 minutes.
And I thought, there was still some good performances. I thought Leo Cullen was absolutely outstanding. I thought he was fantastic in the line-out, and it was a real rallying point. Just as we'll talk about Paul O'Connell, who was amazing for Munster, but I thought Leo Cullen was our totem pole on Friday.
Well, our totem pole was actually Devin Toner because he's that tall. No, I don't think anyone actually played poorly per se. Some guys struggled with being out of position. For example, McFadden, he found the defensive line very hard to manage. But that was, this is a guy who is a good defender, but being played out of position. But you look at our front five, I thought were excellent. We got a nudge on in the scrums. We were kind of dominant in the line out. Back row was very good. I thought Jamie and Sean in particular were excellent.
And we mauled them for about 30 metres at one stage.
I think once we kind of got into them up front, certainly the front row was quite inexperienced, decent second row in fairness, but and the back row didn't really do a huge amount. Volopolo, I thought, when he came on, actually kind of gave him a little bit of go forward.
He was a bit of a bright light for them, all right,
and kind of probably should have started, but you know, I think as well we kind of sniffed blood. They had a very young fullback out, Elliot Day,
And he was
you know,
definitely
and,
dazed.
Oh, he was targeted. He
yeah,
was targeted as well.
it was an awful mistake from Dai Young to leave him on the
Yeah.
field because, as you say, once he was targeted, and that was the crucial point. He made a couple of bad errors, just fumbles and things like that. We got a couple of scores out of them, and that really was the winning of the game. But no, I mean, there was things to be happy about. But
The other thing is as well, I mean, this is something you sometimes see when teams like Leinster say, we've seen it now this year and last year, when the drop down happens between the Heineken Cup. I mean, Leinster are a far better team than Wasps at just on every level whatsoever. And Leinster, I doubt any of us would say that Leinster were in top gear at all on Friday night.
No, funnily enough, it you know, I saw some parallels really in terms of you know, when Munster dropped down, you know, 3 years ago, they went to Brive, and that was another
Bizarre
complete
game.
shootout. It was a complete shootout. It was, I think it was again probably 9 tries. You know what I mean? And 9 or 10, whatever it was. And again, it was just it kind of to and fro. It was very, very open. It was an odd game, and you know. So at the same time, though, Munster followed that up and lost to a more committed team. And so Leinster will have to watch it with Biarritz, because certain will certainly be committed.
Biarritz in general, I think Stade Francais in particular are going to be committed because they actually need to win this to qualify for the Heineken Cup next year. And that's a problem you're going to face because, you know, Munster 2 years ago, ourselves, there is going to be, in the back of the players' mind, there's the there but for the grace of God go I kind of thing. They don't really want to be in this tournament. They'd much rather be in the big brother, as it were. So if you come up against a team that's A, you know, pretty good in the first place, and B really wants to win it, then you're going to have problems if you're not entirely committed, and it could be a problem Leinster face.
Well, it could be, because it's almost been a fait accompli now, because the last 2 games will be home games. You know what I mean? The both will both be at the RDS, and sometimes, you know, as we've seen,
have a habit of slipping up.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen it with 2 league finals, you know, and people thought, well, it's at the RDS, surely, you know what I mean? The RDS will only get you so far, and as Dave was saying earlier, you know, you need. You know, one thing we still do need is, you know, full 80-minute performances. We're not getting them, and we haven't really got them all season, if we're completely honest with you.
No, but we did do something in this game that we hadn't done the last couple of games, actually score a few tries. And we got 5 nice ones, and I thought Darcy's one, which we'll see shortly, was just some beautiful hands.
Some nice hands, some very weak defence, that has to be said.
Well, what it was that's overstudying.
Yeah.
Wasps spent all week looking at the classic Leinster Gaffney loop, right? They saw the ball coming, they saw the guy run around behind, and they were on their back feet waiting to go and shift out when the little pop came. If you watch it again, you watch their body movements here, right? They're not looking at Darcy, they're looking at Madigan.
It was almost too simple.
Yeah.
You know, and no, it was certainly nice hands, but and Darcy took a nice line, but you know, you shouldn't be able to get through that easy, like, you know, completely untouched. But the thing about it as well, actually, and that was something if you've noticed there, in attack a lot of the time, Darcy lined up outside and McFadden lined up inside. You know what I mean? And so maybe that was something they were trying a little bit differently, and it seemed to work in attack wise. Some struggles defensively, obviously, you know.
But when we've spoken about that loop move, that Leinster move, we've always spoken. The reason why it works is because it creates so many points of uncertainty in the defence. I mean, that's the first point of uncertainty, is when the actual loop occurs, and that's where we went through. They were waiting for the loop, and it never happened.
Yeah, but you can't use it all the time. Then it just becomes a pointless exercise.
Well, you see what that does. That reinvigorates that move for the next match. Because teams are kind of going to go, oh, now we have to defend this channel. Makes them narrower.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, the seesaw continued. You know, they scored first, and Darcy got his. They got another one, and then Madigan got his.
Yeah. His usual try.
Yeah, it's just getting predictable this time, isn't it? It was the amount of tries he scored in this season and last season.
Well, in fairness, a lot of them are similar tries, and I suppose the more people see it, the more they'll try and defend it. But it is hard to defend, because, you know, if he gets half a gap close to the line, he has the pace and the strength, you know, to get over.
This is one area where we were dominant that Wasps couldn't compete with, was our ball carriers. We had a range of ball carriers and a number of ball carriers that they just didn't have.
No.
But it was like a game of tip rugby at one stage.
Oh,
it was just the amount of offloads that were coming in.
Well, it did kind of resemble sevens at times, to be perfectly honest with you. And again, I mean, well done to Dars, but again, very, very weak defending. You know what I mean? It's if they were studying that, you know, they would have known he's scoring tries like that all season. Like, no, still fair play to Darcy, or fair play to Madigan. he took the chance and took it well, like. But you know, at that stage, it kind of felt a bit like a farce. You know what I mean? In terms of they're running in one, we're running in one. You know what I mean? Like, so you know, it did tighten up a little bit after that, though. Like, although there still was almost a point a minute in the end. Funny enough, like. But no, Madigan. I mean, he is doing phenomenal scoring. It's 68 points in 3 games. You know,
28 on Friday night.
28 on Friday. You know what I mean? And it's phenomenal scoring. And you can't take it away from him.
Yeah, and we'll talk about him and Sexton later.
Yeah. Well, just one other thing was how good it was to have Rickard Strauss back. Made a big difference. Obviously, his line out throw was very accurate, but as a ball carrier, we saw and a clever ball carrier as well. There, we saw him there taking the ball off Devin Toner and just keeping the move going, keeping it going, not letting the ball die.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Strauss, in fairness to him, he was a little bit slow to get into it last week against Ulster, like, you know, because again he was. That's what I'm saying. He was, and that's just natural enough. Like, but he's an important player, you know. If we can get him back, get him fit now, you know.
And I think this try was my favourite of the match because it, as a former forward, it's always great to see a prop getting his
first ever try.
Yeah, first ever try in professional rugby. No, in professional rugby.
Oh, professional rugby at all?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Jesus. Yeah, no, I know. And a couple of times did he come close. Now that was the poor fullback there who got stuck. But in fairness to Ross, he did really bloody well there. Like he was there. He got up. He had the pace to get up the pace. But I mean, in fairness to him, he was the one there. He got the offload, took it.
The other thing to note is you'll see it on the replay is his grounding of the ball.
That was
excellent. That was really good. Like, he didn't wait to go down. He got the ball out and he got it down before it could even be a question.
He's come close. I remember, I think it was Bath away last year, where it looked like he had the ball over the line, but the ref just couldn't see it. Like, you know, and I'm sure he's been absolutely dying to get it.
Brilliant breakout from Isa.
But again, rubbish defence from
we ran through defence. Though some people were criticising him for taking the kick, you know what I mean, and you know that it didn't. And in fairness, the kick did work out well because your man made a balls of it. But fair play there.
Well, he wasn't going out to sprint Wade. Wade was chasing up on the outside and he had no chance.
But Ross put in an enormous
look
effort
at the hand
to
out
get
there.
Yeah, and terrific. Oh yeah, no, absolutely perfect round.
Yeah.
And you have to credit Toner as well for giving them the shunt over too.
Oh yeah. No, it was great support play. That was the thing. I mean, it was not just like Ross was up there on his own. There was numbers there to drive him over the line.
Lucky as well.
Yeah.
And I thought this one was, one of the few times this season that Sean O'Brien does what we know Sean O'Brien does, is running over people.
Well, it's in that magic 20-minute period.
Yeah.
When we were playing so well. And that's what we do.
This pretty much was the ball game, really, And then it kind of, and again, because we went back to sleep again after, it was kind of irritating, But as you say, because Sean is such a marked man now, it just isn't, it's not going to happen as much, but he just got the hand off there early, and just nice little offload, and Rob just kept running straight, really, and got over.
But again, it's like the previous try. It's about the support. You have to be there to get that opportunity. You can say all he had to do was fall across the line. You have to be at the line in the first place, and that's what he did.
You have to give the guy with the ball an opportunity to make the offload.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, in fairness to Sean, I thought as the game went on, he kind of did get better, and he was getting more kind of prevalent. But an awful lot of the thing with Sean as well is we have to remember an awful lot of time he's taking up ball very, very, standing still an awful lot, Whereas I remember even, especially for Ireland in his first season, he was taking ball coming onto it, you know what I mean? And now, for various reasons, a lot of time, our plays have been very static this year. Certainly the Ireland plays have been very static, and it's not like he's 6'8" and 20 stone. He's just going to barge guys.
Well, see, that's it. I mean, we've been using Sean, both ourselves and in Ireland, as kind of like the bin man. He takes up the trash.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's slow ball, and we use him too close in to bring ball up. I mean, in the first half of the Toulon Leicester game, the way Leicester used Croft is the way kind of we should be using Sean O'Brien, a bit further out, give him space, give him a size advantage. Instead of using him and the rest of the Leicester pack do all that dirty work. We tend to leave it to him. He takes responsibility on himself.
We should be giving him the second receiver rather than the first receiver.
Oh, absolutely. Because as I say, you can only try so much. Fairness to him, he'll never turn down a ball. He'll always try and get it up. But it's hard to get those big runs in if you're just taking a ball static and running into it. You pop forward.
And the final one.
Yeah,
it must have been about the third or fourth block down.
Down. Yeah, well, there was two. There was two.
Toner got two in the first minute.
Two in the very first minute. Great hands here.
And lovely hands here from Darcy, in fairness, and fair play to.
And Issa still had a
Very
lot of
well
work to
deserved.
do there.
He did, and he just backed himself and went. Like he isn't as quick as he once was, to be fair to him, but he
None of us are.
yeah, but he's a super game. I was delighted to see him. Like he made a lot of big impacts in the game,
Yeah.
so it was great to see. But it was a try anyway, and that just kind of calmed the nerves because they had come back into it, even though they did get another try after it.
The
But,
size of the binding on his arm seems to have reduced from last week, so maybe that's
More
getting
aerodynamic,
better as
is he?
well.
Well, again though, I mean he's only back as well, so he kind of needs to get back into it too, and hopefully we get a couple more games.
Well,
We'll see him.
the hands were very good to give him that. We're not seeing it there because this is obviously the TMO thing.
Yeah.
But the hands to put him in, give him the opportunity, were excellent.
Take
Beautiful
give
hands
straight
from
away.
there.
Yes, yeah, no, it was great.
But like, that was Wasps' biggest crowd of the season. They got 9. I know, not a huge crowd by Leinster standard or even Irish rugby standards, but 9,500 at that match. Harlequins had 15,000, their biggest ever crowd in the Stoop, because they put a temporary stand in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's an appetite in England now for clearly for big European games, and once again the spectre of the Premiership rattling its sabre is rearing its head again.
Well, they all lost.
They all lost,
apart from Saracens.
Absolutely, they all lost. But now they have they still have that excuse,
Yeah.
Well, you see, the thing is, I mean, you're talking about the European champions coming to town, and you're talking about a team like Munster who have won a number of European championships with a number of just superstars of the game in
and
their team.
have the experience of doing it as well. So.
Coming to town. So those are games that are always going to fill whatever stadium they're poured into, as it were. The problem for those English clubs is the English rugby fan. Is he going to go? I mean, they're big games, but is he going to go to watch Quins versus, I don't know, Biarritz or Perpignan?
Well, I know, like, when we were down in Exeter, I was standing on the terrace, and these guys were standing beside us, and they were literally in awe of the fellas that were on the pitch playing for Leinster. Like, they were saying to us, can't believe
their
that
team wasn't.
Well, he says, I can't believe that Ryan O'Driscoll is on our pitch. That was their attitude. That it's just that they were, nearly grateful for Leinster coming.
I don't doubt for a second that the average English fan absolutely loves the European rugby. But they're not the ones who are going to make the calls. The ones who are going to make the calls are the money men, and we've debated it exhaustively, and there's no point in getting into it again. But they are ultimately the ones, and I don't think they have the real interest of English rugby in heart. They certainly have those supporters in heart.
Well, if you're
those money men would have got a fright by the report in Midi Olympique yesterday, when it showed just how much money actually players have been paid in France.
Yeah.
There's no way, if England get into bed with France, there's no way England can compete. There's no way England teams can, with their salary capped as it is, even with their marquee player agreement in place, there's no way they can go compete, because they gave a list of 10 guys, all of whom were on far more than even the best player in England is on.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it was a mad one, really, wasn't it? Yeah, and as you say, there was only one of the 3 English clubs in the Heineken got through, Saracens, and all 3 in the Amlin lost.
They all lost at home as well. So
and some of them quite badly.
Yeah.
So anyway, we played Biarritz in the semi-final on 27th of April. It's going to be a great day of rugby. Obviously, we've got our game in the afternoon, and then Munster's match.
No
in
other
the
rugby
evening.
on that day.
There's no. Anyway, so there was some other European games. Quins obviously against Munster. Obviously O'Connell's. Everyone's speaking about what a magnificent, but I still thought it was an incredibly scrappy game. And
that suited Munster. But let's be honest, we went to Harlequins 4 years ago. That game wasn't a classic,
no,
believe me. But we dogged it out, and we didn't score a try, and we won. And I'm having these kind of very interesting things about comparisons between our win in 2003 and Munster's campaign so far. Like in 2009, we lost 2 away games, scraped through on a fairly lucky last day against Edinburgh. Munster this year lost 2 away games, scraped through, fortunate that, Racing sent their under 12s over, But once you're through, you're through. And in knockout rugby, that's all that counts. And they went over there, written off by a lot, to be fair, and quite rightly on the basis of, how bad they were against Glasgow. But there was always a suspicion right from the start that Munster could still drag out a big performance, and 2, the Harlequins weren't actually as good as they were being hyped,
Well, that was the thing. I mean, Paul O'Connell gave this out blather after the match on Sky Sports that you know, oh, the lads, they're not as bad as they made out. Actually, Paul, yeah, you were as bad as you were made out. I mean, your performances since Christmas were atrocious. The reason people weren't backing you was because there was no evidence on which to back you upon. So it's all very well to talk about their proud guys and all that. They didn't look that proud against Glasgow. They didn't look that proud against Ospreys. Didn't look that proud in any number of games. Against Treviso. So, yes, Munster were underestimated, but I think also Quins were overestimated. I mean, did anyone see Chris Robshaw for 80 minutes of the match?
Well, I mean, I think even looking at the teams before the games, like, you know, I mean, okay, certainly, you know, Harlequins have some very fine players, but there's an awful lot of that team as well that, frankly, you'd hardly remember. You know what I mean? There's a few centres, a few second rows, decent club guys. Now, I always felt that, you know, Conor O'Shea achieved a huge amount with that team. He got a huge amount out of it because they didn't have that, you know, had a few superstars, the Evanses, Rob Shaws, whatever, you know, James Johnson on his day. But there's an awful lot of ordinary players in it too, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like, you know, if you get Munster going, if you get Paul O'Connell going, he is a force of nature. And the one thing I'm delighted about, you know, the whole thing is fair play to O'Connell, because like this, we were all thinking he was finished. We'd never see a day like that again. And he dragged them home on his back. Now, he wasn't the only one. O'Mahony had an outstanding game. Tommy O'Donnell was excellent. And, you know, they did a lot of really good things. They took their line out apart. And that's so big. You know, I mean, Munster made their name doing that. You know, because if you take a team's line out apart, we've seen it, unfortunately, with Leinster, with Ireland this season. It can really destroy a team's morale, you know?
I mean, there's been an awful lot of talk over the last couple of years about how the scrum is now the most important thing in rugby. But what we saw at the weekend was two teams with dominant scrums, fairly dominant scrums, and indeed against in the Ulster Saracens game, entirely dominant scrums, getting absolutely walked off the park because they couldn't compete in the line-out.
That's it.
There's twice as many line-outs.
Yeah,
than
generally there is. Yeah, Munster surgically incised that Harlequins line-out and absolutely ripped it to shreds.
It reminded me of the Ireland-England match about in maybe 01 when
they forgot to change the calls.
Correct, and they just decimated their line. It took practically every ball.
Funnily enough, the numbers were only actually 4 steals. You know, when I actually looked up the numbers, and I was kind of surprised. But I think it was one of those things where even when the Harlequins were winning the ball, it was rubbish
scrappy,
ball, it was scrappy, it was done, and they couldn't get on.
A lot of the time they were getting ball off the top, and a guy was falling on the ball and getting the okay, they line out one, and then Munster were just taking the ball off.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, Munster ripped them a new one. Although the score, you know, there wasn't a try in the match. It was very, very scrappy. I mean.
But it was unclinical. Like, there was so many times Munster actually had even a maul going forward and the ball was dropped and it was, you know, it would hit someone's foot.
The thing is, when it boils down to it, I mean, it's a great performance from a team that's not particularly great. So you're going to get stuff like that. The great teams finish those chances. They maul that ball over the line. It's a functional Munster team, no more than that.
No, I think just, you know, one or two class players.
They have a world class
and
player, Conor.
Absolutely, and I think there's some good
players.
But
even guys that have been fairly pillared this season, like their centres, had probably their best game together as a unit in a Munster jersey.
To simplify an awful lot of things, though, they just smashed it up.
Yeah.
You know, there was.
There's no finesse between them.
Yeah, but there isn't. But I mean, that's
that's okay.
These guys
though.
aren't finesse players. I mean, in fairness,
all the Munster backs had to do was play without the top 6 inches. It was all about the physical. It was all about the physicality.
But it was certain incidents in the game. You know, when I think Munster kicked through, their fullback ran it back and he got absolutely pulverised by Downey. But it's just these moments that within the game that sort of change it. You know, from a situation that all your man had to do was just clear his lines, and he didn't, and he tried to run it back. And it just created that opportunity for Munster to raise their game up.
Yeah, you see, already we're hearing a lot of this now. Munster are back. Munster are this team's going to do this, blah, blah, blah. Right, listen, fair play to Munster. They were low in confidence. They hadn't been playing well. And I still don't think they're a patch on the top Munster teams. But it's a cup match. What the hell, they'll win it. The real tests will be go down to Claremont.
Yeah,
now, if they can get anything, if they even get close in Claremont, if they get within a score of Claremont, I'll be very, very impressed. Because the one thing with Claremont is, for all Claremont scored 5 tries at the weekend, and Silvatu and Fafana and all that, and it's grand. Claremont can beat you that way, but they can also grind the hell out of you. They have a big, mean pack. They're not going to bully their line out the way, you know, they're not going to bully Nathan Hines the way they were able to bully Harlequins.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
And
you know,
the Claremont back row is another step up as well from the Queen's back row.
and it's actually got better since they played us because Vuslo is back.
Vuslo
who
is
phenomenal.
back. And the other thing, the area that Queen's where Claremont might be weak is if Brock James isn't available. They do look a little bit shonky, although Skrella will probably be fit by then. But even then, he's not the greatest thing. But he's functional. The thing is,
They got away enough really without
they
with
did,
Roger
yeah,
Selwich
but
playing there in
the
fairness.
thing is that what's his name? That Claremont, they can like you say, they can play stuff with the back three all running. But that's not how they won that match. They won that match. They established the platform by the guys in the front five doing the dirty, hard, honest work. The kind of work that the Quins players were incapable of doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like in fairness to Montpellier, they came up, they were leading, you know, and they were giving it a fair effort. And Montpellier are a good team and they're a tough team, and yet they still lost by 38 points. You know what I mean? So the thing with Munster is, even though the game plan was more limited and all that, and they might say, well, this is how we do it, this is how we do it. I still
It's going to be a huge ask.
While I had a feeling, I wasn't saying outright Munster were going to win it, but I had a feeling Munster could do it all right. But Jesus, if they even get within 10 points of Claremont, I'd be very, very impressed with this current team. You know, it's going to take literally 15 Paul O'Connells, I think. You know what I mean? In a way, to go and beat these guys. You know, but at the same time, what are Munster going to give? They're not going to give a shit. They're in a semi-final. You know what I mean?
The worst
Earlier
thing
in the
that can
season,
happen to you is you go out in a semi-final.
Yeah,
You know, that's
But from where they're coming from,
yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
like it's still it's
That's
a
hell
good
of a boost.
achievement.
It's a hell of a boost.
And the other match, is a disappointing Ulster performance against Saracens.
what performance.
Yeah, they just didn't show up, did they?
Nope.
Turns out the worst thing they did was beating us because they thought they kind of got a test against us, but they didn't, because you see our defence was so poor and so lax. It didn't prepare them for the Saracens' defence, which was always going to be tough, aggressive.
They look shell-shocked.
constantly, and they absolutely they just never, there was never any pace in their attack.
Yeah.
None of their big players really showed. Pienaar had it's very rare you say Pienaar has a bad day. He had a bad day. That knocked on to Jackson not having which is a very ineffective kind of day, and there was just never any pace in them, And in fairness to Saracens, they're a horrible team to watch, but they know what they're doing. They're very well organised and they're very committed. And they went out and just smashed everything in white.
They had their game plan. They
had their game plan.
They pressurised Rory Best.
Yet again, Rory Best, when the pressure comes on, the line out goes to hell.
Yeah.
And it's happened too many times. And again, just as last week, I heard some talk about he should captain the Lions after he played well against us.
He won't be going on the Lions
He'll
tour.
be doing very, very well to even be on the tour at this stage. You know what I mean?
Because at the end of the day, his first job is to throw the ball into the line out, and that's the weakest part of his game. The other problem for Ulster, even as big a problem as what they were having on the pitch, is that their squad is actually quite skinny. They were having problems at halfback. They were getting no direction from halfback. But they don't really have the talent to change.
They don't really have anyone to bring on. Like all
Well,
they do
that's
is
it,
move Pienaar, and Pienaar hasn't played particularly well
They
at
can
10.
Pienaar out to 10 and bring on Marshall, neither of whom are very convincing in those two roles at 9 and 10.
It was
Well, Jim,
interesting when Anscombe was actually asked afterwards about Marshall, and he said, well, Marshall isn't going to win line-outs, he's going to win the breakdown. And that's where we've been struggling. And they were struggling there all day. So.
But they didn't have the ability to change it either.
No.
Even when they did win a line-out, the halfbacks were just, there was no spark or anything from any part of that team. But when a team is going badly, you expect your halfbacks to give you that spark, to give you that little bit of creativity, to give you that go forward, and it simply wasn't there.
I will say one thing about Ulster though, and we've seen this with both Munster and especially Leinster. It doesn't always just happen as you think.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You don't go from quarter final to semi final to final to being champions. Just like when we got to the semi finals, then in 06. And the next year, then we were hammered in Wasps. Ironically enough, then the year after we didn't even qualify. And we had to take those slots. And sometimes, you get on a great form and everything. Well, this is it. This is how it works. And sometimes, you do hit bumps in the road.
They're still a very young team, really. When you think
that's-
about it, you've got Marshall, Jackson, Gilroy, and the second row lad or the back row guy, Henderson. Like those four fellas played in the under 20 match that opened the Aviva.
Well, you see, that's the thing. I mean, they are a young team, and the example you gave is exactly the right example. You have to build. You have to learn those. Yeah. You have to learn from those bad days before you can go on for the good.
But do you think they were slightly? You mentioned Harlequins earlier on about being a little bit overhyped, obviously being the English champions and so on, but they've kind of had a bit of a poor streak in form recently. similar to Ulster, they've had a very bad run of form since Christmas, with the exception of the match against Leinster. But they, like if you think of last season as their natural progression, they got to the final, but they played a fairly dysfunctional Munster team. They beat probably the worst team ever to compete in the Heineken final, Edinburgh, and then they were destroyed by Leinster in the final.
Well, that can happen. I mean, the parallels to 2006 again. I mean, Ulster that Ulster team got too far too soon, if you like. A bit like ourselves in 2006. We got to that semi-final before we were ready to even come close to handling something like that. And Ulster, we got walloped by Munster. Ulster got walloped by us. So it does set you back. And the question is, the next year, how do you deal with that setback? Well, Ulster have dealt with it the exact same way as we dealt with it. They got to a quarter-final and then got absolutely hammered off the park by a team who just knew what they were doing.
Yeah, this is it. I wouldn't give up on Ulster just yet. As you say, there's a core of young youth there, and there's more coming through too. The big question will be asked: what happens when the big foreign signings are either gone? I mean, Muller's injured again. He's going to miss the rest of the season. He has missed a lot of the season, really. Pienaar needs a break. Pienaar's wrecked. He just looks
played
tired.
12 tests in the last year.
Plus now, in fairness to Afoa, he was outstanding, and he was their biggest positive in terms of the scrum. But again, he's got his domestic situation, whereas he could end up leaving. He wants to stay, but the situation where a guy is popping, halfway around the world to meet the family.
What is it? 8,000 miles.
This is it. This is, can he really do that for another year? You know what I mean? So
there's
a lot of questions there.
But also need to spend money. Is it halfback? If they're going to sign a foreign player, they actually need another scrum half. Now, whether that's going to be a foreign player or they find one in one of the other provincial academies, or Heaney comes through, I don't know. But because Marshall is, I don't like to use the phrase, but he's a busted flush. They need a second scrum half, and they need another out half.
Yeah, they actually almost need a Jimmy Gopper. In the sense of that they need to have some decent competition,
a decent backup for Jackson.
And another option
they have is the backup for Jackson is the guy who's on the park.
Yeah,
if things are going badly and you're getting knocked back all the time, the guy who you're expecting to step into 10 has taken the knocks already. He's not going to be looking for any more. Yeah. That's where they're weak. I mean, a bit like Harlequins themselves. I mean, there are some good players in the squad, but there's no depth. Whereas if you compare that to, say, Munster, not the greatest side, but they did have depth. I mean, they were able to bring on a 3-time line as a second row replacement in O'Callaghan. As a luxury a lot of clubs would kill for.
Yeah. And the other European match was Toulon against Tigers, and I thought when I was watching it, I thought, geez, are Toulon really a club? Are they a team, or are they just a bunch of very highly paid individuals? But I think they proved that they are a fairly decent, strong club.
Went some way to answering that question for me as well. I was watching the game and I thought, well, one thing I know about Leicester is that they're a team. I don't know if Toulon are a team. Now, okay, the loss of Croft was huge for Leicester, I thought, because a lot of what they were doing was built around that, and it caused a lot of problems for Toulon as well. The way their defensive line was getting pulled on.
Was it a bad injury, or I didn't see it?
It didn't look like a bad injury, but he pulled something and he had to go off. I mean, he couldn't.
He's only back from a long-term injury.
But he was pulling the Wasps or the Toulon back row all over the place, and Leicester were making ground through the gaps they left.
That's what Wasps.
I know, yeah. But I said it again. The Toulon pack actually got together and really drove through when things were going badly at the start of the second half. They turned that game around, and that it did answer a number of questions for me as well.
I saw, funny enough, I was driving back from Cork originally, ironically enough at the time, and I was just getting updates and all that, and I was looking at the score thinking, oh god, another bloody bore fest, you know what I mean, just kicking, you know what I mean, the whole thing. But in fairness, from what you were saying, and just in general, like, it seemed to be a fairly full-on game. There didn't happen to be tries.
There wasn't big tries, but the intensity was huge.
I saw one bit of play, and it was the bit where Arieze broke his shoulder, like, and Bota looked like he scored a try. I'm not entirely sure what the penalty was given for, but it was a great bit of play. In fairness, even from Bastareaud, who's not always the most committed player, let's be honest. Like, but it was actually a good bit of play. So who knows? Maybe it'd be a little bit of a better fight. I have a horrible feeling though.
Maybe they get the big bonus.
Toulon. Well, listen. it's the battle of the mercenaries there. It's the battle of the, poaching every kind of player. The English do it, the Saracens just do it on a smaller level, but they still go out and poach everyone they can get, you know what I mean? And against Toulon, who do it around the world. But listen, let's see how it goes. I still don't particularly like either of the clubs as organisations, to be perfectly honest. And whoever comes out with the other semi-final, I hope beats them.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so we play Munster next weekend. Back to in the Pro 12. We're 2-2 between the two clubs over the last 4 years down in Thomond Park. But we've got a 2 extra day turnaround. Yeah. And I think that they're spent emotionally after their semi-final or quarter-final on Sunday.
If Munster were playing any other Rabba Direct team on Saturday, you'd have to say the other team. But for Munster, don't get emotionally drained when they're playing Leinster. I mean, if they wanted something to recharge the batteries, the sight of those blue shirts coming out in front of them, that'll recharge the batteries. So one thing that may have an effect is tiredness and knocks. But emotionally and intellectually, for want of a better phrase, Munster will be bang on it.
Oh, they'd be up for it.
Yeah,
they'd be up for
bang on it.
I don't think there's any doubt. Because at the end of the day, they can rest the next week. The week after. I mean, this is essentially... Yeah. This is almost the end of their league campaign, really, in the sense that they're going to give it one big last hurrah against Leinster, and then everything else is going to be focusing around Claremont. Probably O'Connell will get a rest.
Things like they're not even looking at this game in the context of a league game.
No, it's a derby.
The league is over for Munster.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They could get a bonus point win against us, and the league is still over for them. It's a game against Leinster. It exists in a bubble of its own creation for them. So they would, like we said earlier, they'd be well fired up for it. They'd be well prepared. They'd be mentally ready. It's going to be very, very tough.
The only thing though is
physically,
if it gets into a real grinder or whatever in the last 20 minutes, you might find it just in the same way as when we went to the final down there 2 years ago, and it was a pretty close game up to about 60 minutes, and then our legs just went.
But also if you remember what Joe Schmidt said at the end of that match is, we'd like to have won it. They wanted to win it.
Yeah.
And I think that this game means more to us than it does today,
I think
because of the league positions.
Yeah. Oh, we're definitely playing for more in terms of the league. The only thing though is it's still Munster and Thomond Park, and even though, and also it was funny, back in the day, when we had the run of 5 consecutive wins and all this type of thing, there was so much hype. If they lose again, it'll be 4 in a row that Leinster have won. They won't want that either. You know what I mean? They'll still turn up. As you say, the 2-day turnaround is massive, and plus the fact that they had a probably more intense game in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
It was physically far more intense.
It was a real battle. It was a real bruising battle. But
you wouldn't have thought too many of the Leinster guys were stiff and sore after the match.
Well, I mean, it's like any game. They'd be stiff and sore, but come on, it was a much more open game. It wasn't a real. I just say we've played enough. We've played and won enough Heineken Cup games when you see guys literally being dragged off the field and they're just wrecked. I don't think it was quite the same.
The intensity was a step lower.
Yeah.
I don't see. If it were any other game, like I said, if it was Clonethley or Edinburgh or Wasps coming into town, Munster, I'd say, would make a number of changes. I don't see that happening for this game. Apart from anything, there's a couple of guys in there who had been carrying knocks that they'll want to make sure keep ticking along. They'll want to keep sure. They'll play O'Connell, I'd say, for an hour. They'll want him to keep ticking along. They want Rog to get pitch time because he hasn't had a lot over the whole Six Nations thing. A couple of other guys like that as well. They'll want to get Earls. They want to get Earls.
Even Zebo.
Yeah, even Zebo.
Zebo another game.
So, in a way, they're lucky that their hands are tied to get these guys get because these guys will be on the pitch for them.
Yeah, but in a thing though, whatever about Munster, we need Leinster to show up here because. What I heard about last week and all that, this is going to be a game at another level, and this is a must-win game. If we want, we might get a favour off Scarlets, who are home to Glasgow on the Friday night. Now that's probably even still debatable because at the moment Glasgow are playing far better than Scarlets, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they went and won there. But even if we do, we're going to have to back that up by going and winning and. It's never easy because even when we've won down there, it's never been
it's never been
an easy one. It's always been tough. It's always been a grind, a point or a score in it. So I don't. I mean, even God, when we went down there and we were 20 points to 9 up at half time, thinking stroll in the park, this is done, and Munster just came out and won the second half and just kicked it, and they just put it on pure will. So you can't take anything for granted down there, but I'm just hoping for a better Leinster performance. I want to see our just defending a hell of a lot better. I want to see us, playing with a little bit more verve. At the end of the day,
one thing we can be sure about is that the Leinster defensive line will be far better.
It needs to be.
Well,
absolutely.
There's no question.
Well, with Brian
O'Driscoll
O'Driscoll back,
he runs that line. The line will be fine.
Yeah.
We don't have any problems with soft lines against Munster without Brian O'Driscoll running it. So that's the thing. But
of course, the big question is, and this is asked by a couple of lads on Facebook, Dara O'Connor and Phil Fanan, who's going to start at 10? Will it be Sexton? Will it be Madigan? Personally, I think he's going to bring Sexton back in, but that's just what I think.
It wouldn't surprise me if he did. Joe Gents to kind of back, who he considers the best players, he intends to bring him back in. For this game, I think there might be value in starting Madigan on the bench and bringing Johnny in, just so we don't get Johnny injured again. You know what I mean? Bringing Johnny in maybe on the half an hour mark, half an hour from the end. Going forward though, this is the biggest debate. Do we play one? Because obviously Johnny's leaving. Madigan's the coming guy and all that. On a broad level, I would like to see Madigan start the remaining Amlin games, and when the crucial league games are there, the Ospreys game, any knockout games, I'd like to see Johnny start.
Well, I'll tell you what we need. That's fine, but in order to get Johnny Sexton into that position, because he hasn't played for however, 2 months, he needs game time.
It's true,
and I think he has to get game time. And I think this game is
like a lot of people were kind of saying jettison him once he's. I think that's. No. I don't agree with that at all. Like you've got one of the best players in the world.
Yeah,
the best 10 in Europe.
It's very simple. We have Johnny Sexton is a member of the Leinster squad. Until he ceases to be so, he's available for selection. The Leinster team should be the best 15 players available to the coach. So, but in order to get Johnny Sexton into a position where he's on that, you have to give him game time. He has to get a game back.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe the best way is to do it like you say. Give Madigan the 50, give him the 30. Maybe the best way is to do it the other way around. Give him the 50, give Madigan the 30.
Possibly,
but he has to get some pitch time.
The only reason why
we need both of them for the running.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think but
the thing is, I'd like to almost see Madigan say, listen, Madigan, we're going to trust you to win the Yamlin. Now the priority is still the league. And I want our best players on the pitch for that. And at the moment, Johnny Sexton's still the best player. Brilliant as Madigan has done. But, Johnny Sexton starting his thing. But I'd almost like to see both as a kind of a dry run for Europe next year, when it's just going to be Madigan. Okay, Jimmy Goppert will be there. But, I'd almost like to see him, listen, we're going to trust you to win that Amlin for us. And I think that would be a massive, as well as exposing them to European rugby, it would be a massive
with the number of games left in the season. You don't actually have to say it to him. Just pick one, then drop, then the other, then one, then the other.
Pretty much,
because that's the way our run of games goes for the season. So you don't even need to say it to him.
But also Sexton needs some game time to get back in the frame for the Lions, because obviously the Six Nations was curtailed to a game and a half.
That's true.
I wouldn't be so worried about the Lions. I mean, he needs game time just for himself as a professional sportsman to get back on the pitch. The Lions will be picked based on who's fit. He will be fit. It's not going to be just on that 2 month period.
No, and I still think even now, because even after the Lions, even with Johnny missing all that, no one really gave a standout performance at 10. That was the man that they'd be on the thing. There was certainly no one from Scotland. Bigger, while decent and improved as he went along, still doesn't inspire you. Farrell, his actual stock went down. When he started missing a few kicks, his general thing, he kind of losing his temper and all that. He'll probably still go.
Well, the thing with him being still involved with Saracens in the semi-final, he's still in the shop window.
Yeah, well, funny enough, you're talking about shop window. You're actually, there's a couple of rumours now. Maybe it's more Irish based or whatever, but a couple of people start talking about maybe Ian Madigan. You know what I mean? As one of these bolters.
Again, every time all season a player has played well in a match, suddenly he's a Lions bolter.
But it hasn't been a match, to be fair.
I know, but
he actually has been consistent.
It happened after the Glasgow game. You see it in England. They're talking about, is Wade a Lions bolter? Is so-and-so a Lions bolter?
Well, you remember Earls 4 years ago? He wasn't in the Irish squad. He played a couple of matches for Munster up to the semi-final, and he got picked on the line.
What do you see? We always see, we see these bolters, and they're always English. almost. You know what I mean? And like, why not an Irish bolter? You know what I mean?
It's not a matter. It's not a matter of being a bolter. I mean, I actually don't think Earls was a bolter. I think that he'd been a player who'd actually been played very well, particularly in that period since Christmas for Munster. I think the way Munster had played as well really played to his strengths.
That match against Ospreys,
yeah.
picked half of, well, not half, but certainly a number of those.
Yeah. Well, they did look supreme.
They did, absolutely.
I mean, they were in. There was a form of their lives. But anyway, who knows? You know what I mean? It's one of those things. But you could make a case that listen, if he was the third, if you took 3. No, I personally don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to take Laidlaw and have him covered at both positions.
And plus as well, I mean, Gatland's such a curmudgeonly old beggar. He's not a guy who's going to be swayed by a headline in the newspaper.
No, he's not. Nor should he be. Should he be? Like, but at the same time, like I have heard even some of the English things talking about could you bring him on a thing like, because he could be a guy who could light up a midweek team, especially. You know what I mean? And he can kick. So it's never any harm.
Could be there, all right. And just a couple of pieces to finish up. George North off to Saints. We flagged that last week that he was leaving. Seems to be a bit more talk about Joe Schmidt for the Ireland job.
There's talk. It's very hard to know. I mean, it's hard to know what's going on. There's more kind of conciliatory. Kind of, instead of saying, well, obviously, I'm away. It's more kind of, well, we'll see what Leinster think of it and all that.
I just thought it was interesting when at the Leinster press conference during the week, both McFadden and Greg Feek were talking about it rather than just kicking it to touch.
Well, I doubt very much that they introduced the topic of conversation. I mean,
but they didn't kick to touch, Dave.
Yeah, but they can't. I mean, what are they going to say? Our employer is shit, and no way would he want to work for them. I mean, when it comes down to it, there was a lot of non-denial denials, and nobody's going to say no. Nobody's going to rule themselves in or out. Very few are anyway, unless they actually have no choice because they're under contract. And Schmidt is under contract, but he's under contract to the RFU ultimately. It's like I was saying earlier. I mean, over the last couple of years, Munster, Leinster, Ulster have all changed coach. Connacht have changed coach, and the guy who's been really talked up at the beginning of the process has never been the guy who's got that job. So it's hard to know. I mean, the Western Mail is leading with the story indeed today, that Sean Edwards is in the running for the Irish coaching position. For a guy who seems like a perennial number 2, it seems a strange kind of thing, but he is an Irishman.
He did play rugby league for Ireland.
And also Joe, I suppose, was the perennial number 2 for years as well. Like, that would certainly be a wild card, and I just don't see the RFU doing that, I'll be honest with you. But
I don't see Sean Edwards being able to put up with them.
No, and you'd wonder. But listen, as much as it would hurt Leinster for Joe Schmidt to leave, if you ask me who was the one coach you want to coach Ireland at the moment, is Joe Schmidt. So listen, if you get him in, as much as hurt us, I'd love to see it. But the only way he'll take it is, one, if you take it on his own terms. He's not going to put up with the bullshit that's there, and he's on record because he sat in on a lot of these professional kind of meetings, where they had all these discussions. He said, "Well, listen, this is what's wrong. This is what needs to be fixed." He'll only take that if it's fixed, and that would be good enough in itself.
But was Kidney not on the same end as Joe Schmidt was prior to him becoming the Irish coach, where he knew the pitfalls associated with being the head coach of a provincial team?
Well, maybe Declan didn't have quite the power to come in and say, well, listen, this is what, if you really want me. Now, in fairness to Joe,
he didn't want him, that was the thing.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you see, so he didn't quite have that power. If Joe takes this job, he'll take it on his own terms. He's not going to take the same thing. And in a way, he'll do more. He'll even if he only does it for 2 years, he'll do more good for Irish rugby just by taking that stance. The
IRFU didn't really want Kidney. They were kind of in a way, not railroad. I don't want to use railroad, but the machinations within the IRFU meant that he got the job.
Well, also the 2 Heineken Cups meant that he.
I know, but the IRFU, there was a lot of opposition to Kidneys within the IRFU, but that's neither here nor there. What it meant was that Kidney didn't have the political strength to make demands upon his hiring, whereas the RFU really wants Schmidt. And he is in the political place.
They really
actually,
want.
I think Kidney.
So we don't really know.
We don't know yet. No, that's a fair point.
I think Kidney played his hands in getting his own backroom staff, as opposed to what was happening to him when O'Sullivan was the coach and he was foisted upon O'Sullivan, or foisted upon each other. They didn't get on with each other, and neither of them wanted to work with each other. Whereas I think when Kidney came into the job, he probably used up all his political capital to actually say, well, these are my demands, and I want to bring my own forwards coach, my own.
And he did end up with a manager imposed upon him in Paul McNaughton.
Yeah. And also, you have another situation with, Joe's, his family situation where, he did only sign a 1-year extension with Leinster with the view to going back to New Zealand. There is that issue. Now, I think even if he did take the Ireland job, I'd say he'd only signed a contract to the World Cup. You know what I mean? And So then it could be a case of, well, then do we need to replace him again? Then will he go home? Then Now at that stage, I'd still take it. I'd still take it on the basis of I'd love to see what he could even do just in the space of 2 years. That would be amazing. But who knows?
Who knows? One other small thing I just want to talk about
Jesus,
before we
man,
go.
you never shut up.
I know. Was the spitting incident with Stringer at Bath. I mean,
it's
disgusting.
gross.
it was
Disgusting.
like,
Disgusting.
Phil,
I hope that guy gets a year. Like, there's talk
no,
of a
he
year
won't.
ban. But there's
No,
talk
he
of a year ban.
won't. No, he won't.
There was a
He
guy
won't.
playing for, I think it was Utoxeter. Now, if it wasn't, I apologise to any our regular viewers in Utoxeter. But I think he was playing for Utoxeter. It's down a couple of levels in the English ladder, and he was done for spitting, and he got a year.
Well,
but
that is
wasn't-
ridiculous. I'm sorry, but there's guys who've done eye gouging and got 3 months.
When
Now,
you
come
see,
on.
what you have is, you got a cultural thing as well. La Fourchette is not regarded so badly in France as it is in the Anglo-Saxon countries as it is, and I think spitting's the same. But it's strange. Fial is a very experienced player.
Yeah.
I mean, he was playing. He was part of that. Well, the squad anyway. That great Toulouse squad at the tail end of the 1990s.
Oh, he's been around for years, and he's actually a very good player.
He was on the good Stade Francais team. To do something like that, and it was a spit, and it was deliberate, and it was disgusting. I think he should get a long ban. I wouldn't go for it. I wouldn't say a year. But I do think he shouldn't see a rugby pitch until next season.
I think he'll get 4 or 5 weeks. I do think we have to literally, let's not lose the run of ourselves. As disgusting and unpleasant it is, there's still far worse things. I mean, at the end of the day, would you prefer to get spit at or a guy stick a finger in your eye? It's disgusting.
Why should there be a moral equivalence? I mean, both are disgusting acts, so both should be stamped out of
But
the game.
one is far more dangerous.
Well,
you know what I mean? One is actually causing physically harm, or stamping on a guy's face, or stamping on a guy's knee, and the guy's getting 2 or 3 weeks, and then a guy spits in a guy's face.
There's physical harm, and then there's other things as well. Because actually, what the guy from the rugby club that may or may not be Utoxeter was done for was not actually, he wasn't done for misconduct. He was done for bringing the game into disrepute.
Yeah, that's it. No, I think he should definitely get a ban. But I think let's not lose the run of ourselves here. There's worse things that happen on a rugby pitch.
I don't think he should play rugby this season again.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. There's only a few weeks left of the season anyway.
That's it. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think he'll be around in the semi-final anyway.
12 weeks would be my recommendation to Mr. Blackett. 12 weeks.
Anyway, before we go,
just one last thing about Peter Stringer.
Go on, sorry.
It's been announced today that he's going to sign for Bath for next season.
He's actually signed.
Oh, it's announced. Yeah.
Sorry.
Done deal. He has signed for Bath for next season, which you got to admire the guy. The guy doesn't need to play rugby anymore. I mean, he's won everything. He has his career.
Just needs one more cap.
He just needs one more cap. I don't think he's ever going to get that. Unfortunately, he has done everything in the game, but his desire to play rugby. I mean, it would have been quite easy for him for this season, or indeed for last season, sit on the bench at Munster, collect his pay packet. It's obviously not what he wants to do.
Well, he's gone off twice, you know what I mean? And in fairness, he's gone off to Bath, and he helped Newcastle last year.
And Saracens.
And he helped Saracens, and he's gone to Bath this year. And in fairness to him, he's actually, every time he goes down these places he plays, he's as fit as a fiddle, in fairness to him.
Yeah.
There's one thing about him is he's never been a drinker or anything like that.
No.
He's just... And even though he's not big, obviously, you know what
He's
I
the
mean?
model
He
professional.
very, very rarely gets injured. Even when he was playing serious level, very rarely. did you
Himself
see
and
him get injured.
O'Gara were hardly ever injured, and they must have played together 50, 60 times consecutively for Ireland.
Oh
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, he's durable. Good luck to him. Good luck to him.
Yeah.
But in fairness, a lot of people the weird thing in Munster, because you see guys like Duncan Williams who are frankly nowhere near the level required playing ahead of him, and you're kind of going, I don't know. But Munster badly need to get some new scrum halves.
I don't know if you saw Bath's Stade Francais. Stade Francais took Bath apart, but actually one of their standout players was Peter Stringer. He was the only one who seemed to keep his head.
Well, and unlike his opposite number.
But even so, I mean, it would have been very easy. There's a good example. I mean, it would have been very easy for him to swing an out, punch at your man, and it would have been completely understandable. But no, he didn't. He kept his head.
He kept his discipline.
Very good professional.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so on that note, we'll finish up, and thanks a million for watching. Cheers.